Hello. I just spilled coffee everywhere, so let me clean that up real quick. This is kind of the pilot slash premiere slash whatever creep show crafting. It's going to be a heavy crafting show talking about some of the most disturbing stuff. I had this camera set up yesterday, but apparently it's going to look different when we go live. Alright, let me pull up YouTube on my laptop so I can actually see the chat, because I won't be able to see anything on this camera the way it's set up. It's funny how everything does not go according to plan when you start these things. What? No. So there's me. Pull this up a little more. I should have did this before I actually went live, but of course I'm fashionably late, as one does. There we go. That'll... Oh, well, that sucks. But we'll get it all figured out. Okay, YouTube. Let me pull it up here. I want to mute myself so I don't have to hear myself. Again, next time, I might edit this down. I don't know. I will try to set up the camera earlier because I honestly didn't think about it beforehand. And I've never really used this rig before, so yeah, that's a thing. So we'll kind of do the official start here in a second, as soon as I get myself together. Let's see what I got here. And if anybody is in the chat, I will respond, but there is a lag on between StreamYard and YouTube to where I can actually see it. I'm sure there's a solution to this that I haven't actually figured out yet. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I can see it now. Trial and error? Yes, thank you, thank you. I like the change. I like the screen name. You might get some background noise. I hear dogs tearing shit up out there. Okay. I don't really know how I feel about this green cutting mat. I might get rid of it at some point. Yeah, the lag is terrible. My God. Alright, let me move this computer closer so I can actually see it. I might look up some of those crafting ladies and see if they have like any tips on how to get their stuff set up better. Okay, I guess we'll just go with this. Yeah, that looks okay. Like I said, the lag is so bad that when I look at the computer screen on YouTube, it's deceptively like, yeah, it's really laggy. All right, so welcome everybody. This thing looks crooked to me. I'm gonna have to not obsess over it. Actually, I might just do away with it. It's not really necessary. I'm not cutting anything. Oh, I have light. I have better light too. Jesus. Wow, that might be too much. Does that turn it down? It does, but that's a lot of glare. Anyway, this is Mia, mother of one. reporting from the 19th level of the tower. And we're going to talk about some things that I think are disturbing or just dark or whatever. Sorry, I'm like really, really not used to doing YouTube. It's been a hot minute. So yeah, this is coming back because I can't deal with that glare. Again, I might edit this later. Probably won't. I mean, nobody really watches the first episode of somebody's show anyway. Alright, I'm just going to put it here, and I'm going to call it good. I'm not going to mess with it anymore. It's done. It's good. Alright, so we're going to talk about, and I have to preface everything that I'm saying that this is all allegedly, whatever words you want to use for the legal sake, the legality of talking about a giant corporation without getting yourself in legal trouble. I had everything organized, and then I started piling everything on. We're going to talk about a major food conglomerate organization of Nestle and their 1970s Lactogen scandal. I keep looking at the camera because I'm all messed up on it. There has to be a way to make this better so that I can, adjust stuff without having to stare at the screen. There has to be a better way. Okay, so yeah, I was going the wrong direction with it. There has to be a better way to do this. Okay. We're going to talk about the Nestle Lactogen scandal from the 70s. Okie dokie. We'll see you in a few. I'm just going to pull up a couple of these ads. First one we have here. I think this is probably mirrored, but I don't know how to change it. So, oh no, it actually isn't. It looks okay. Lactogen babies. It's a lot of these are a little bit older than the 70s, and they sort of advertise the fact that Lactogen is, according to the Nestle Corporation, was a better replacement for breast milk, which obviously it isn't. I have notes. Where's the notes? All right. And we're going to make some paper beads tonight out of these Lactogen ads they're not original. They're not real vintage. I printed them out. Some of them I already cut up. Oh, here's another one, but the proportions on it are really way off. I cut the top of this baby's head off on accident. Oops. And I actually had coffee dyed this paper. This is one of the ones on the bottom. When you coffee dye paper, you dry it in the oven. And the ones that are on the bottom will usually have these lines on them. I kind of like the way it looks sometimes. So I'll kind of go back and forth between walking through the, yeah, see, there's the next one on the stack. I'll go back and forth between discussing the Lactogen scandal and talking about the making of the paper beads. I did pre-cut some of this so that we can only not waste a lot of time cutting them now. And then we'll just kind of get right into it. And I have a bunch of pre-cut strips. Sometimes you can take these papers and you dress them up a little bit before you go ahead and cut them. I like to have different colors. Like if you look at this one, there's a little bit of blue here, a little bit of black with lettering. And then some of the different kinds of tans and everything. So the colors are a little different. But I think they'll make some cute beads once we get them all put together. So you can use scissors to do this. Pretty much what you're going to look for while you're doing these beads are long strips. Kind of like a really long triangle. This one got bent up, but that's okay. They look like a really long triangle. I really don't want to mess with the camera to zoom in at all until I have more experience finagling this. Oh, I just ripped the bottom of it off. That's okay, it doesn't matter. I have a bunch. So again, long strips. If you want to make like a round bead, like a barrel-shaped bead, it's the triangle strips. And if you want to make, I don't think I have any. Oh, maybe. If you want to make like a, not a round bead, but like a, oh shoot, I can't even describe what word I'm trying to think of here. You can't make strips that look like a really long rectangle, and that gives you a different shape. Basically, you have different shapes for whatever you're trying to do. But like, I'm going to cut the edge of this off. I use the paper trimmer. You can use scissors. It's not a big deal. I'm going to discard this edge in my garbage can that's too far away. So depending on how wide you want to make these beads, I don't even really go too extra into the actual measuring, or I try to make them as even as possible, but near the end, it doesn't really matter if they're exactly perfect. I'm not a perfectionist when it comes to this stuff. Some people, I mean, I kind of am, but the beads give you a lot of freedom to make these kind of mistakes. Not so much if you're doing the rectangles, though. You get a lot less leeway with that. Let's see what this one turned out like. Because with the rectangle beads, they don't turn out as rectangles, but if they're not exactly even on the edges... Oh, I'm off camera. If they're not exactly even on the edges, you'll have a part that hangs over. Like this one looks pretty darn close. Anyway. And don't mind my grungy old supplies because I am cheap and I don't want to replace my stuff. Uh-huh. Hello there, people whose names I'm not going to say. I'm not going to mess around with making mods or anything tonight. This is kind of the, like I said, I need to get back into the swings of things. I might not even keep this up. I don't know. I might edit it if I can figure out how. But, all right, like I was saying, we can use some ink to add a little bit of extra color to the paper. It really doesn't matter what's on the back because you won't see that once the beads are completed. I do have a couple of these blender thingies that were kind of pricey, but you really don't need those. I'm going to give you guys a lot of tips on how to kind of budget down a lot of your crafting when it comes to this stuff. So if you have any makeup sponges, these will work just as well. So I don't even know, this might be dried up. Oh, it's not. It doesn't matter how sloppy it looks. So these blenders work pretty well. Most people use them like this, and I'll show you what I mean. Is they'll go along the edges of paper and do one of these deals, and I love the way it sounds. I just love the sound of it. It's my favorite thing. When I watch those craft ladies, when they blend the edges. And the thing, like, again, any quote-unquote mistakes, once you cut these, nobody's going to notice that. Nobody will see your mistakes. And in a lot of this kind of crafting that we're going to be doing, it won't matter. Like, just work in your mistakes. So I'm going to use the little blender sponge, the makeup sponge, just to kind of give you an example of how that works. See, you actually have more control with a makeup sponge, especially you ladies who are used to putting this stuff on your face with great, delicate movements. You actually get more control with these than you would with the big blender. I do like the blenders, But again, for more finer details, the makeup sponges work better. Let's add a little bit more blue to this. That way when we cut it, we have a little bit more blue. I actually have a new sponge here. Bloop. Because if you don't clean your blenders in between, if I were to add the blue to this, it would just get really smudgy because you can see how there's still a bunch of brown. So a lot of people have different blender heads or tips for the different colors. Sometimes I reuse them, sometimes I don't. I don't know. I get sloppy with it. And these are just cheap inks that I got for like, I don't know, it was like a 25 set for like $8 on Amazon. This one looks kind of dried out. So I'll show you a quick tip before we get into the story. If your inks dry out, you can take a little spray bottle with water. Just spray it right on there. Maybe give it a second. Yeah, it got on the paper too. Doesn't matter. Like I said, this leaves a lot of room for error. They're so easy to do. Another way to do these that are really, really good that I've found is to use, see, these are so old. And I hate to say this, but ink pads actually are one of those you kind of get what you pay for kind of deals. If you're just doing stuff like this, the expense of it really isn't probably worth buying the high quality. But if you're doing a lot of projects with inking and like coloring things, like if you're doing any serious journal projects, springing for the expensive ink is probably an investment that would benefit. It really is one of those you get what you pay for kind of deals. So, all right, so we've added a little extra color to this page. I want to add a little bit more to the end, maybe just up in the corner. And the edges actually do matter because once we cut these into our strips and roll them, you'll see what I mean, as in it doesn't really matter how consistent the color is or where it really is. It just matters. All right, so we'll cut a couple more strips just so I can show you on the camera. And I know everything's kind of off. Again, don't mind any background noise here. Okay, I'm going to cut the light edge off of this side. And I might cut this paler edge off the bottom too. I don't know yet. Sorry about background noise. Can't really do too much about that. And it is hot, hot, hot in here. You can see I've already kind of cut this one because it's at an angle. See, let me make sure I'm centered here. Just line it up as best you can. There's no real measuring. Just make it so that one end is wider and then the other end is narrower. And line it up. Cut it. You really do want to keep your paper cutter edges sharp because then you get these things. I don't know if you can even see that. It's like a little... Okay, sorry, I was reading the chat. Like I said, if I respond to that, there's a big lag on there, so let's cut one more. And I have a bunch ready to go. Okay. And these cutters on these trimmers actually last quite a while. But yeah, that one's about done for. Alright, so this can go off to the side. You can see where I accidentally sprayed that. That kind of actually adds an interesting look here. Alright. So doing these crafts and telling these stories at the same time together might be a little bit... I guess when I actually get into the actual rolling of these beads would be the best time because it's a lot of just sitting here. So here's some that I cut the other day, and you can see where the trimmer is really bad on these, like really bad. Let's start with a bigger one. I don't know, I might just leave these little puffies will fall off eventually. Now, if you're using paper that's white in the center, when you get along the edges, you can't really see it on here, but sometimes there will be a stark white edge on the edge of the paper, and that's when I like to come along again with the blender and just kind of color in that white edge a little bit, so that when you roll the bead, you don't have like a ridiculous amount of white on the end of it. And yeah, I mark up all my stuff because I don't care. Usually the brown works a lot better for this, or if you have a really deep colored blue, or and I have several colors sitting over here, I just haven't really done anything with it. Oh, here's some of this brown shimmer. Let's do that. Okay. I like to do the end. I like to do the whole thing. But this is kind of hard because these aren't cut very well. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Nestle real quick while I'm organizing my mind here. In the late 60s and early 70s, the Nestle Corporation, which was actually started in order to find a better way to feed babies, the head of Nestle was, Nestle, that was his name. I can't remember his first name, doesn't matter. He actually had a good, I'm going to open this Distress ink spray, which I've never used. He actually had good intentions. It was pretty much after his, like, once the corporation got big enough to where he wasn't really running it anymore, is when everything kind of got out of control. Pretty much Nestle wanted new consumers, and they figured other countries would be the way to go to find these new consumers for their product. So they decided to go overseas to a lot of third world countries like Africa, places in Asia, even India. And they would try to get people to buy their product. And they had a lot of marketing, advertising, and that didn't really go very well. So then they thought up a quote unquote better plan, which was to force the necessity of their product onto people. And by that, I mean that they wanted people to have to use their product instead of breastfeeding, because breastfeeding, as everybody knows, is sanitary for the most part. It's cheap, as in free, and it's actually the best for a baby. I'm not trying to start a controversy. Fed is best, but there are some scientific benefits to breastfeeding a baby. So there's so many of these. Let me find my notes. I had them just a second ago. I need like a little tier thing to stack my stuff on here. So they would go to the hospitals when women had given birth. They would actually hand out free samples of their product to these brand new mothers who had just given birth. And when the woman and the baby were discharged from the hospital and the samples ran out, all of a sudden they weren't free anymore. And by then, the interruption in the lactation had actually caused the milk to stop producing. Just one moment, and take a drink. So in the crucial moments right after a baby's born, if you don't stimulate the production of milk, especially in countries where nutrition isn't the greatest, the milk will dry up so fast. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Milk will dry up really fast. And that was kind of their goal. They wanted these women's milk to dry up, and that would force the need for formula feeding. So after they handed out their free samples, the milk dried up and they had to use the formula. Sorry, I'm stammering all over. The thing that about that is that these underdeveloped nations, or quote unquote third world countries, however you want to put it, the cost of formula would take up 40% of the family income, 40 to 50%. That's literally half of their income. That's a prohibitive amount. I mean, if you think about today's world and today's money, 40 to 50% of your income alone just to feeding your baby, not feeding the whole family, not anything else, just that. And that's a lot of money. And so these women would try to stretch the formula out. They would add like extra water to it or extra sugar, extra whatever else they could get a hold of to stretch it and make it last longer. And that alone caused more malnutrition because it's not enough nutrition to sustain a baby, let alone the growth. So even a lot of the babies that survived this ended up with long-term negative effects. All right, let's go back to this for a second here. Now, I actually bought a tool for this. You can't really see it because it's so small, but this is like, these are actually quilling tools, but it has a slit in it. So what you can do is you take this and you can put it in the slot, and then you can twist it. But for a lot of people who don't have these tools, this will make a bigger hole. I started out doing these by using these skewers. They're big wooden skewers. And it makes it pretty darn easy because I'll start with this biggest one here. You just get a hold of it here, make it lined up, and then you just wrap it around. You want it to be even, so not off kilter or anything. Sorry, I keep looking up at the camera over the top of it to see if I'm on cue. I need to figure out a better system for this because there's so much lag. But this is a good learning experience for this kind of video. So once you get it twisted around there, then you just start, you're going to want to hold it. You can use your thumbnail, which is what I usually do. Because right on the edge, because as you roll it, it'll get smaller. So you can actually hold that with your thumbnail and keep a hold of it almost the entire time. Or you can use a pair of tweezers, which I haven't really found greatly effective for me, but I've heard other people do this. Yeah, see, for me, I'm too awkward with it. But you can hold it with the tweezers. Yeah, the tweezers are too awkward for me. Probably the best way to go about this, if it's something that you do a lot, is to spring for one of the bead rolling tools. They're kind of expensive. They're like $30 on Amazon, which I wasn't going to pay just for a bead rolling tool because I'm cheap. So once you get it how you want it and secured, which sometimes takes me a minute, you can just start rolling it. Again, I hold it with my thumbnail on the corner there. And I lost it, which happens a lot. There, got it. And if you don't get this first part just how you want it, the final bead will this is like the hardest part of it, is getting this very first part just right. Because the bead will look cattywampus if you don't get it just right. And if there's any little pieces sticking off the side, you can cut those off with a craft knife later on. Alright, I finally got it how I want it. And then you want to roll it tight, but not so tight that you're ripping the paper. And you want it to roll evenly with the same amount on both sides so that as it rolls down, it looks even. I don't even know if you can see that. I might need to go closer with it. I think next time I will bring it in a little closer. Alright, so With the milk drying up and the cost of formula prohibitively expensive for these ladies, inevitably what happened was a lot of these babies would pass away from malnutrition. And also, a lot of these countries didn't have water purification that was up to standard the way that we do in a lot of other countries. And so, in addition to everything else, a lot of the formula was made with unsanitary water. Shoot, I'm barely even looking at my notes. I'm sure there's more to this. They didn't put any instructions in their native languages. This one looks messed. This bead looks messed up. And if they're looking too thin, you can use thicker paper, or you can also even double up paper. So like glue pieces together. This one, I made it too wide, so it's going to look weird no matter what. But this is kind of what they look like at the end. But that's just kind of a really, like I said, I made it really wide. When you make them wider, you need to make them longer, or they turn into this like really long sort of cigar looking thing. And I didn't glue it while we were going. It's not really necessary, but near the end, you want to put at least a little bit of glue to glue down the tip. And press it down. And that will close it. That will hold it closed. So there's that. Ta-da! What happened to my light? I don't really like this lighting rig either. That kind of sucks too. Another thing that Nestle did with the Lactogen scandal was they would, once they got kicked out of the hospitals and everybody realized what they were doing was bullcrap, they would hire women and dress them up like nurses and have them go into the hospitals and hand out samples of the formula to women who would, like, after or as they were being discharged. So they would stand outside and pretend to be nurses and give, like, quote unquote health advice that really wasn't health advice. It was just lies. And there's a lot more that goes into that story, but it's more like they would influence people they would give payoffs to doctors to suggest this formula as a better alternative to breastfeeding, which everybody knows is not true. Let's see here. Yeah, make sure. Blah, 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 blah. So in 1977, everybody kind of found out what was going on with this. They instituted a boycott of Nestle over this whole situation. Sometimes while I'm doing these, I like to, why did I put the lid back on that? Add a little bit in the middle. That way, if I accidentally let it go, it doesn't ruin the whole thing. But there was a big boycott that was lifted after a couple of years because people kind of forgot about what was going on. In 1981, the World Health Assembly developed what they called the Code, which means that, like, it basically dictated the way that things should be marketed as far as formula products shouldn't be promoted as being better than breast milk. Labeling had to be presented a certain way, and it's pretty much basically it was more of a voluntary thing, and a lot of companies just didn't do it. And Nestle was they kind of pretended like they were going to, and they kind of did for a while, but then they really just didn't really care. Let's see here. Was that the end of my notes? Jesus, where'd the rest of it go? So pretty much Nestle, and specifically their Lactogen formula, they allegedly pretty much targeted third world countries and the undereducated, impoverished women and children in these other countries, and made a required need of the formula versus it just being like a convenient supplement. Or, I mean, not every woman can breastfeed, and that's all right. But it's when that need is forced by a corporation that it really turns into like some bullcrap. I mean, a lot of babies passed away from this, and the number that I read, they did a study on it in 2018 that showed that the total number of babies that passed away as a direct or indirect result of the Nestle Corporation and their scandalous ways was 10.9 million. I mean, let that number sink into you. 10.9 million dead babies. That's absolutely awful. I mean, there's nothing that... See, I wrapped this one too tight and I can't get it off of here without messing it up. So 10.9 babies. 10.9 million babies. It's just sickening. And that's not even the worst thing that Nestle has done. Well, that's the worst thing, but that's not the last thing. Even to this day, there is a lot of slave labor utilized when they are getting their ingredients for their candy products, and continuation of trying to promote their products in different countries in a way that is very misleading. And it's just really, it's really abhorrent. And I would just recommend to everybody not buying their products as much as possible. That's easier said than done, because they are a huge conglomerate and they own tons of stuff. Tons of stuff. Alright, so here's one of the finished products for these beads. And the way that I like to seal them, you can do this a lot of different ways. I think the easiest way is to just stick it right on the end of the skewer very lightly. See if you can see this. Yeah, I need to bring this in closer. Literally just take some clear nail polish and just paint over the outside of it. And I usually do a couple of layers of it just because the paper will absorb it. There we go. So I know this was kind of a scatterbrained, not great presented episode here, whatever you want to call it. It's just trying to kind of figure out the physicalities of it. I might do a couple more of these little kind of, I don't know, I might do some what I call like practice runs where I don't know. I'm not sure how to really, if that's something that I should just practice a couple and keep them up just so I can see my own growth, or if I should delete these early episodes, or how to do that. But all right, I try to let these dry for a little bit before I flip it around, because I do put some on the inside. That way it seals the inside too. These really aren't that waterproof, even after they're quote unquote sealed. But I do like the way that they look. You can't even really see it because the light doesn't go that close. Huh. And I don't really like the light that came with this camera holder thingy, so I don't know. I'll probably end up trying something different for next time. So again, I'm not sure how I really want to do this. I have a hard time staying focused anyway, so doing the crafts and the talking at the same time are kind of, I might need to figure out a better way to do that. What I might do is discuss the topic. Like I might talk about, like get all the craft stuff set up and run through how to make them. And then as I make them, then discuss the topic. I did say cattywampus. I got my wordy words. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, and I need a better lay. I need to actually make notes of what I need to do differently. So again, thanks for bearing with me on this. It's kind of short. We've been here 45 minutes. That's actually longer than I thought. But on the crafting thing, like I said, you can't, oh my God, you can't see squat. Sometimes I like to add a little bit of like sparkle or something. And if you have a sheer nail polish, you can literally just take that and just like add a little layer to the outside of it. And when it dries, it'll be a little bit sparkly. And I have other beads that I've made. I didn't bring them out to show off. I actually like the way this looks. You can't really see it that much. I guess the lighting isn't as bad as it looks. Okay, yeah, it looks totally different when I'm looking at my phone versus looking at my computer screen. There has to be a way to deal with that lag. I actually really like these. I'm going to make the rest of these, and then I'm going to make it into a bracelet or something. And then, yeah, it's all over me. And the next show that I do, I will show you guys what the finished result looks like. What I should have done is did enough to make a bracelet out of them this episode, and then put them all together at the end. So, well, I'm going to go ahead and end this here. Thanks everybody for coming. Yeah. Could have went better, could have went worse. I mean, nothing really broke or fell apart or got smashed. So, thank you for coming. And hopefully the next one goes a little bit smoother. I'll work around with some camera angles. Maybe move my trash can close. You know, all the stuff. And it's so hard to end. So I will just sign off. This has been Mia reporting from the 19th level of the tower. And I will see all you lovers, next time. Bye.